Today you join Brendan and I at Dealer Auto Auction of the Rockies to check out two hot hatches, one for under 20 grand and one for under 10 grand. What did you bring?
Yeah, I am representing the Mazda Speed 3 because I think for less than $10,000, it is quite possibly the best hot hatch money can buy. What did you bring?
I've got this Subaru WRX. It's a 2013, and it's basically the favorite car of anyone who lives in Colorado, aside from maybe a 4Runner or a Tacoma.
I know you see these things everywhere out here in Colorado, but you don't see many of these. I think that's why mine is the better choice.
Well, let's start out with the Mazda because it is the cheaper option, and that goes a long way. Now let's start things off with this Mazda Speed 3 hatchback because this is on the lower end of the price spectrum of what we're looking at today, and it's not just a regular Mazda 3 hatch.
Yeah, no, they gave this a lot of spicy bits because they took that economy Mazda 3 and slapped in a 2.3 liter turbocharged engine pumping out 263 horsepower to the front wheels that also like to steer themselves when you give it full throttle.
Well, and I'm pretty sure these also have a limited slip diff, and it's not an especially heavy or large car, so that almost 300 horsepower goes a pretty long way. And they also did a couple cool things to the outside of this car. For one, and this is very 2000s, but they've got these clear taillights here on the car. I think that's pretty period correct. I actually don't think that's a bad look.
Yeah, and then this one I think may have an aftermarket exhaust that's a little bit bigger than the stock one, but the stock one did sound pretty good. And my favorite part is because this is the first generation Mazda Speed, and the front end doesn't look like it's got some sort of goofy smile going on.
Oh, you don't like the smiley face?
Yeah, no, the second gen looks kind of silly with that big old smirk going on there all the time.
It does.
Although the second gen does have a hood scoop, whereas this just has a little bit of like a sculpted slight bulge over the regular one. But I kind of like the understated look.
Say what you will about the later Mazda Speed 3s, but I do think they look a bit more aggressive, which is cool. And, you know, especially with the front end on this, these headlights being all fogged up. I mean, this is a dealer auction, so, you know, you're never going to find the most pristine examples of anything, but this one doesn't look as cool as some do. There are some pretty cool looking Mazda Speed 3s out there, and then let's check out the interior.
Yeah, so on the interior of these, as you can see, they gave it some really nice fun bits. Like these seats are really well bolstered, and they're like leather with, what is this, like an Alcantara insert with Mazda Speed written on the back.
It says Mazda Speed there. It says Mazda Speed up here on the dash. It says Mazda Speed on these little trim panels. And of course, you've got a 6-speed manual. You also have a slightly sportier steering wheel. So, you know, it's a dated interior, but yeah, they did add a couple bits. Should we take it and see how quick it feels?
Yeah, let's hop in, and we've got a little test track here. Now, it's maybe a quarter mile that we can take it down, or maybe, if I'm being generous, half of a quarter mile.
Now, as we get moving, let's talk more specifically about pricing on these, because we said under 10 grand, but what do you usually see these go for, Brendan?
Well, obviously it's going to depend on the miles and the condition of your particular car. I have seen these go in rough condition with a lot of miles for less than $5,000, and you can get a really nice example, which this is actually pretty nice. I wouldn't say it's the nicest.
The suspension is a little clunky. Maybe we've got some bushings that are blown out, but
other than that, like the interior's not all ripped up. The headliner's still in one piece. I would say something like this with only about 100,000 miles on it, you'd be looking to spend at least $7,000, maybe up to $9,000 if you're buying from a dealership.
Yeah, which too, I mean, for a nice example of a car like this is really not that much money. I mean, that's a pretty practical and sporty car for the money, and we'll show you what we mean by sporty. I'm gonna roll down the window, see if we can get a little noise action.
Well, this window, I know,
that's as far down as it goes,
Yeah, it just kind of makes a flatulent noise there.
that's all right.
but yeah, enough. Let's see what kind of speed I can get up to on the test track here. So, a little bit of wheel spin there, all the way up to that 6,500 red line. I mean, I got it up over 40 miles an hour in this little test track.
It's pretty quick, and I also like that Mazda generally makes a car that handles reasonably well, drives pretty well. It's just a nice car to drive. And yeah, I mean, again, for the money, that's a pretty sporty car. That's faster than most vehicles that you're going to run across on the road.
Well, Case, I think it's time we take a look at your WRX and see what an extra $10,000 is going to get you.
Yeah, and that is kind of where it becomes a little bit harder to make a case for this because it is a good bit more expensive, but you get a couple things for your money. One of the big ones being all-wheel drive. And especially when you live here in Colorado, look, if you're just sticking around the Front Range, a front-wheel drive car like that Mazda Speed with a decent set of snow tires is gonna be just fine. If you do wanna go up into the mountains in the winter, you wanna do some skiing, realistically, having both snow tires and all-wheel drive is going to be a really huge benefit to you.
Well, and this particular one that you picked out seems to have not only winter tires with the all-wheel drive, but I think it's got a little bit of a lift going on, doesn't it?
It does kind of look like it's got a lift.
It does look like somebody's lifted it maybe an inch, maybe 2 inches off the ground.
Yeah, this is also, this is very CU student spec because it's got some fake carbon fiber here on the roof rack. It's got these vortex generators here, and you know, it's got some not so great mods.
Would that actually create vortexes?
I doubt they're getting a lot of vortices off of that little piece of plastic. Yeah, and it is a little sun faded in some spots, I noticed. So this, kind of like the later Mazda Speeds, this does have a hood scoop. Obviously that's classic for any performance model of a Subaru. But yeah, a little bit of fading there, same kind of thing. The headlights are turning a little yellow, and honestly, these to me look like some cheap aftermarket headlights. But I will say, on the plus side,
what kind of power is this putting down though?
It's 265 horsepower from a 2.5 liter turbo, so it's about the same power as that,
yeah.
But all-wheel drive.
So it may actually feel slightly slower because you're routing all that power to 4 wheels versus just the 2.
Yeah, and I doubt that it's any lighter. But, you know, I think these are decent looking cars from the outside. I'll be 100% honest. I'm just personally not a big Subaru guy. But I mean, I don't think that these are bad looking cars from the outside. And let's check out the interior. You know, most of this, well, I guess, I mean, this is part of the reason I'm not a huge Subaru guy is most of this interior is, let's be honest, it's just pretty plain. You know, it's a lot of black plastic. There's not a lot of contrast in here, not a lot of interesting design. I mean, this isn't, you know, it's a 2013, so it's not brand new, but this car isn't that old.
Well, honestly, if I was dropped into this car without knowing what it was, the only giveaway that I can see here is the WRX logo on the backs of the seats, because otherwise, this looks like just every other Impreza that is out on the road, and they really didn't do a lot on the interior as far as jazzing it up and making it feel like a sporty car.
Yeah, this even considering this car's age, it's 10 years old, but this interior feels 15 to 20 years old to me. So that's a bit of a point of contention, but why don't we jump in it and see how it drives? Because at the end of the day, these are hot hatches, and we want to see how much fun they are to drive. That's a big important factor when it comes to these. One thing I do actually like are my gauges here in front of me. They're kind of a cool shade of orange. I actually think that's neat.
Well, and I will say, my favorite thing about the WRX is the sound. So they really don't sound like any other 4-cylinder out there. When you start modifying the exhaust of a 4-cylinder, it sounds like a fart can, right? It's not like an appealing sound to most people, but for whatever reason, these boxer motors create kind of like a little bit of like more throaty, deeper sounding 4-cylinder that, you know, if you're not an enthusiast and you don't know what you're listening to, you could mistake it for a V6 or maybe even a V8 because it just sounds a lot deeper.
It's a very distinct sound. I would have a hard time mistaking this noise for anything else because there's not really any other engine, not even really any other Boxer engines that sound quite like the Subaru Boxer because of the way that they do their unequal length headers from what I understand. I'm not, like I said, not a massive Subaru guy. It is a very distinct noise. I think it sounds better than most inline 4-cylinders, but what sounds really good actually is the fact that this one is modified in such a way, and I'll shut up as we accelerate so we can try to hear it.
Yeah. Ooh. Okay, that's definitely faster than the Mazda Speed, but that is not stock.
No, and you can hear a little bit of blow-off valve, and actually driving this earlier, and let's see if I can get it to do it, not getting quite on a boost as much. Listen to this. Did the blow off again. Every now and then, if you get on boost just a little bit, it makes a little bit of a flutter, which is kind of a cool sound. I mean, it's very fast and furious.
I could hear it.
Yeah, just a little bit. So, yeah, okay, this car makes some cool noises. I have to be honest, I am enjoying driving it. The fact that you get that snow performance if you live here in Colorado, that's a huge factor. So there are a number of things that this car has going for it that could potentially make it worth more money. I'd say if you don't live in snow country and you are price sensitive, then probably that Mazda is going to be the way to go, because I just don't think that the all-wheel drive is going to do that much for you unless you're really married to the looks of these Subarus, if you're really married to the sound that you get from this four-cylinder, you know, then maybe it could still be worth that extra money. But I think probably the biggest motivator for someone going for something like this over that is going to be that all-wheel drive.
Well, and we haven't talked about the biggest downside of owning a WRX yet. And that is the fact that you would own a WRX.
Yeah, and you're going to be associated
with those, you know,
those characters.
Yes, I don't want to name exactly what the WRX owner is, because I'm sure you out there can picture a WRX owner in your head, but I don't know that it's a group that I would associate myself with, whereas these, you just don't see them very often.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of these, especially in this nice of shape, end up just going to your general enthusiasts like you or me that just want something fun and unique to drive around.
And I do like the subtlety of this. I think in some ways it's maybe a little bit more grown up just because it's understated, especially this earlier Mazda Speed 3, because it doesn't have the big scoop and everything up front. Yeah, for better or for worse, I think if you get a WRX like that, you're definitely going to be associated with a certain kind of person, and you know, yeah, that could be good or bad. I'm kind of with you though, and I think if I had to pick personally between these two, I'd probably go for the Mazda just because it is so much cheaper.
Me too. I mean, you're talking, like, let's say realistically, if I had to put a specific number on it, I would pay $7,000 for this. If I was out shopping for this, I would expect, now I wouldn't actually pay this, but I would expect to spend $16,000, $17,000 on this guy. And maybe our numbers are inflated here in Colorado. Maybe these are a little bit cheaper out in your neck of the woods, but that's what we would realistically pay here. And I just can't justify the price of two of these for one of those.
Yeah, exactly. So let us know what you guys think down in the comments below. Are you a huge Subaru fan and now you hate us? Or do you kind of agree, and which one of these would you want to take home?
Yeah, or just tell us that the Mazda Speed is great, because of course it is.
I think so,
for everything else, check out all TFL. This has been Brendan, Case, and Alex behind the camera. Thanks for watching.